R.L. Miller is famous for being a thorn in the side of the establishment Democratic Party officials. And now she's found herself as an elected member of the Democratic National Committee. This is going to be fun. She's not planning on tempering her confrontational attitude when it comes to holding leaders accountable. She's here today to talk about making change on climate from within the party. RL is the political director of Climate Hawks Vote and president of Climate Hawks Vote Political Action. She is the elected chair of the California Democratic Party's Environmental Caucus, and her past work has included exposing the politics of climate denial, exposing fracking for oil in California, and training others to advocate for legislation. RL, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you so much for having me. And you'll forgive me if I sip an occasional cup of coffee. It's still 7:30 in the morning in California.
Please do. And I appreciate you being here at such an early hour as we talk across the country with folks. Can you start by talking about your road to the DNC? Did you aspire to electoral politics or was it a shock to be invited?
Well, I was elected to the DNC. The people who elected me are the California Democratic Party's executive board. It was about 350 people. I spent 6 months campaigning for the job. And we ended up having to do a vote by mail in March, and we ended up not being able to count the votes until May. So all my plans for an in-person get out the vote, followed by a night of drinking champagne or drinking alone with tequila. All those got thrown out the window, but it's done.
Why did you run? You ran. So
I was really angry about the way that Tom Perez handled the climate debate. And as I got into the race, it wasn't just the climate debate. It was all those rules. You remember all those rules about how you had to get X% and Y polls and Z states and have Q donors that ended up forcing out people like Jay Inslee and Kamala Harris and leaving in the white male billionaires like Michael Bloomberg. None of those rules were ever voted on by the DNC as a body. They were all made up in Tom Perez's head.
I have to say, Jay Inslee would have been an excellent candidate right about now. I met him. He was really great.
And to be clear, any one of our Democrats is going to be better than that abomination in the White House. Joe Biden was not my first choice, but he was the first choice of enough voters that we're going to get.
Well, he was the first choice of the DNC, wasn't he? I mean, that's how our people kind of see it. It's like, everyone dropped out on the same day. What's the likelihood of that to force the vote to go over to Joe Biden? I'm still voting for him. I'm voting for anyone but Trump, right. But at the same time, it's hard to say that this was a clean, primary that came out with the best person for the job.
Absolutely. It felt like there was just something wrong with it, the way it kept on squeezing out well-qualified senators, governors, people of color, and ended up with Joe Biden. Not that he's not qualified, but yeah, there were a lot of other people. We started off as the most historically diverse field ever, and we ended up with another old white guy.
I think there were people who were, more qualified and more maybe would speak to the moment more, just like perhaps Bernie Sanders may have spoke to the moment more 4 years ago, and the DNC didn't really allow that to happen either. They put their finger on the scale for certain. That's a nice way of saying it. Anyway, that's what's done is done on that front. And here we are with Joe Biden. Let's talk about the Democratic Party's climate plan. It doesn't meet this moment of crisis.
Which climate plan? So right now we've got 3 and maybe 4 climate plans floating around. Okay. So number 1, we've got Joe Biden's plan, which has been up on his website since June of last year. And I keep on hearing rumors that he's going to put out something better and it's going to be fantastic and we're all going to love it. And I've been hearing those same rumors since Earth Day.
I have never heard him even, granted, I don't watch everything he says, but I've never even heard him say the climate. It's important. We need to have it front and center. He's not,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So first off, we've got the Joe Biden plan. Second, we've got the DNC meeting in the dark. Do you know that they held a bunch of public hearings on their platform?
No.
Nobody else knew either. It's okay. They did them last week when nobody was noticing.
Public platform.
Right. They announced on, I got an email as a DNC member-elect Monday at 9:30 in the morning that they would start holding platform hearings at 2:00 that afternoon. And these people were invited, and they were all very carefully choreographed. There was no genuine public hearing in the sense of, let's open this up to anybody after we do some basic screening of questions. And so it was horrible. And they held 9 hours of platform hearings on YouTube last week. And you don't know about this, and nobody knows about this.
No.
So there's that platform drafting process. So last August,
they did put a few good people on that drafting board, right?
Hold on just 1 second. I'm going to shut down this annoying background noise.
Oh, okay. Well, we're speaking with R.L. Miller. She is let me get the actual, she's from Climate Hawks Vote. Let me get your specific title, because she's the political director of Climate Hawks Vote and the president of Climate Hawks Vote Political Action. And she is elected chair of the California Democratic Party's environmental caucus. This is a big deal. So anyway, where were we? Go ahead.
So last August, when we organized really extensively for the DNC to hold a climate debate. We delivered 225,000 signatures on petitions. I drafted resolutions for Democrats to pass calling on their DNC members to hold a climate debate. And the DNC did not listen at all.
Like a real public one on CNN. I think there was a side one, wasn't there?
That was, yeah, and that one was no good. Yeah. But at that same meeting, they also set up a climate and environmental council. So this was their way of giving us a sop. And the head of the Climate and Environmental Council, her name is Michelle Dietrich, and she's a Bernie-crat, and she's totally awesome, went and drafted her own platform recommendations. And she got input from the experts. So this is not just a random person, but this is a DNC Climate and Environmental Council platform that could be easily used. And the DNC finally ended up giving her 5 minutes to speak at their scripted hearings last week. Otherwise, they're trying to ignore it, and they're trying to portray her as the insurgent wing of the DNC. Well, guess what? I've been elected to the insurgent wing too. So it's all a mess. Then we had the Biden-Bernie Unity Commissions. You remember those? The Unity Task Force?
No.
Yeah.
I remember them.
This was supposed to be a bunch of high-profile committees or task forces that were going to come up with platform recommendations. And there was one on economics, and there was another one on racial justice, and there was one on climate that had AOC and Varsh from Sunrise and John Kerry. And they held a couple of meetings behind closed doors, and that's the end of it. You get the impression that the DNC offers these task forces to just make people think that they're listening to both sides, and then does nothing with their recommendations.
Why are Biden or the Democrats, the DNC, so reticent to meet the moment on climate? Is it because of the corporate donors? What are we talking about here? What are we up against?
Sure, corporate donors is one thing. Some of it is genuine fear that talking about, for example, a fierce a fracking platform is going to lose them Pennsylvania. talking about shutting down the Dakota Access Pipeline is going to lose us North Dakota. Well, guess what? It got lost in court, and we've lost North Dakota anyways.
Yeah. So, but I mean, we could have. Yeah, exactly. We just reported earlier today on how there was a big victory in terms of pipelines recently. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline was stopped. Your thoughts about that?
Both that and the Dakota Access Pipeline, which was stopped this morning. I have a big thought about this. Activism wins. Activism matters. Everybody who's listening, get involved. And there's all sorts of different ways to get involved as an activist. I found out fairly early on in my life that I'm good at navigating the inside world, but some of my friends picked up and drove out to North Dakota. I couldn't do that. And I'm honestly just in awe of the people who did. More power to them. But activism matters, whether you show up in North Dakota or whether you sign petitions or show up in Virginia, put your body on the line, whatever it takes. Draft resolutions, meet with your legislators, tell them to act now, get involved. As this is a big movement, and there's a place for all of us in it. And, to quote one of my favorite people, to change everything, it takes everyone. And so, I am not saying that my path is the path for everybody. As I say, I'm good at Democratic Party politics. I'm one of those people who argues over the commas. And I ended up writing a resolution that became a law and changed California politics. And that's one of the ways that you make a difference. But there's a lot of different ways, and everybody find your own place in the movement and get involved and stay involved.
Arl, we have a lot of activists who watch. We're Act.tv, and we cover basically the progressive movement, and also we encourage people to stay true to their values, and we try to fight the good fight on Facebook and social media, which is all skewing to the right, to be just right-wing talking points, and we're trying we do our best to fight those and to give people the things they need to support their activism. A lot of people have believed that there is no inside activism inside the party that's going to work given the corruption that we're seeing, that outside activism is the only way to go. Your thoughts on this, what you've seen, any information you can offer now that you've been outside and now that you're part of sort of the inside of it?
As I say, the party is very large and it's very difficult to shift it. But I fight oil companies in my day job. And so one of the things that I did is create the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge. And I'm not the only person behind this. Again, this is coalition work. But what I did was I'm not sure if you can see the signs here. I put the words of the pledge on foam core board. And I told all the politicians who come around the Democratic Party meetings who like to basically pander to voters that if they want to talk to my caucus, they have to sign the pledge in public. And so you can't see it in this light, but one of those boards behind me has been signed by Amy Klobuchar, Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris. And so
not Joe Biden. How unusual.
He did sign it.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yeah, not on my board, but at a different moment.
Okay.
Pete Buttigieg signed a board other than mine. Everybody takes a picture of themselves signing the board or puts out a meme on social media. And so we keep track, and we're up to, I believe, about 2,500 politicians throughout the United States, including every single candidate who ran for president. Every single serious candidate who ran for president signed that pledge.
RL, what do you think is the best way forward at this moment? I mean, we are dealing with a pandemic. We are dealing with climate crisis currently. I don't know how many huge hurricanes it's going to take to wake people up even more. The West is on fire. We are currently dealing with climate catastrophe. What is the what do you think is the way to sort of address this moment in our electoral system?
The first thing we have to do is get this monstrosity out of the White House and flip the Senate. At Climate Hawks Vote, and keep in mind, I'm an electorally minded person, and so there's a lot of other things to do as well. But my answer is always going to be get Trump out of office, flip the Senate, and let's also build up a climate hawk block in the House. Right now, we have a lot of Democrats who say they want to act on climate, but they're pulled in a lot of different directions, and there's a lot of other issues that seem more pressing. And when people write reports talking about the year 2050, well, I have a secret for you.
Are we talking about Pelosi?
Yeah, Joe Biden is going to be dead in 2050. I may be dead in 2050.
If the climate keeps going the way it's going, we all may be dead in 2050. I mean,
right. And so when politicians talk about 2050, they're kicking that can down the road and they're punting it to the next people. And so one thing I'm going to tell your viewers to look out for is whether a plan talks about 2030. Because if it talks about 2030, it's going to be mostly at the feet of the person who was president between 2020 and 2028.
Which would be hopefully some Democrat.
Right. And so who we elect has a huge impact on what we do in 2030. Not to mention that, the minor detail of science and the IPCC telling us that we only have until 2030 to turn this thing around. And so, to get back to your earlier question on why Democrats aren't rising to the moment, because they've got a lot of people also shouting at them quite accurately that Black Lives Matter. And we've got other people shouting at them that we've got kids in cages at the border. And those people need immediate attention. And we've got other people screaming about healthcare and other people screaming about guns. And, and so it's easy to think of climate as a faraway problem. And one thing I need to tell to your viewers right now, I'm a Woolsey Fire survivor. Okay. I left my home with my 94-year-old mother and my dog, not knowing if my home would be back. When I came back, I was evacuated for 3 days. I watched my son's childhood memories burn on national television. The flames came within 500 feet of my home. And if you want to talk about climate as not being a very immediate problem, I got news for you. It's right here, right now. And so I do this thing in California where I ask people to first stand up if you're from paradise, and nobody stands up because nobody's from paradise. Then have you been directly affected by a wildfire? And a third of the room stands up. And then simply, do you know anybody who's been directly affected by a wildfire? Everybody in the room in California knows somebody who has. And if you, and so I could repeat that exact same exercise in the Iowa and Nebraska talking about the floods. I could go down to the South and talk about hurricanes. And so if you think the climate change is not affecting you, you just need to talk to other people.
Arel, here's something I'm wondering about your thoughts on. I would like the climate movement to constantly be making the argument that climate is at the base of everything that is happening. Resources are at the base of how Black lives are being treated terribly. One of the base, right? Just hate, not, that's there too. But resources have always been at the base of that. The scarcer the resources, the more the marginalization of different communities. It's the same with these other directions that they're being pulled in. I want to hear a pounding away at the idea that the climate is at the base of all the problems that we have. How can I get that? I mean, because I don't want these Democrats to be pulled in all of these different directions. I want the one direction to be, hey, this is the thing we all share. And I have people in my stream chat on Twitch saying, another direction that seems more immediate is people can't pay their rents, mortgages, student loans because they don't have jobs. Okay, the Green New Deal that AOC put out has a guaranteed jobs program. It has, we could have a national jobs program, a national, mobilization right now that could be green, that could solve the pandemic and be green. How come we can't get the Democrats to use green as, not just like, oh, we're going to stop the fracking, but we're going to solve all these problems with green? Someone should hire me. I've got good ideas. It's just like they don't have to be afraid of we're going to stop the fracking. Just focus on the thing that we're going to do and move in that direction. No?
And we're going to get jobs out of this. We're going to fix things and we're going to get jobs. And the jobs are going to be gorgeous. And the jobs are going to pay well. And hopefully the renewable industry is going to be a little bit more union friendly, because if you're big enough to be publicly traded, Tesla, you're big enough to be unionized, Elon Musk.
I was going to say something vile, but you might appreciate it. I just shit on Elon Musk a little bit right before you came on because he's supporting Kanye West running for office. Oh my God. Anyway, what is happening, RL?
He makes the most awesome cars, but he's not a good person. We can buy his cars just like we can buy Henry Ford's cars.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
We can go to Disneyland without falling in line behind Walt Disney's politics.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about, as we come to the end here, let's talk about which races you're watching closely these days and what you would say to voters who want to vote for candidates, with the best climate platforms.
The first is to simply ask the questions. Have they signed the No Fossil Fuel Money pledge? Are they supporting a Green New Deal? Or if they're not willing to utter the words Green New Deal because some consultant has told them not to, are they willing to sign on to the House Democrats select committee plan that dropped last Tuesday? And I was saying that there are several different climate platforms floating around. That one is pretty good. It's got some problems with it, but at the same time, it's a heck of a lot better than anything ever put out by Congress. And if we could get that one passed into law, it would be awesome. So I'm looking at races like we've got a primary on July 14th in Maine to decide who takes on Susan Collins. Everything I've heard from my Democrats, including the Climate Hawks vote people, is that they prefer Sarah Gideon. There's also a couple of good activists running, and I think it's up to the people of Maine to decide which one. But then we have to beat Susan Collins. We have to beat Joni Ernst in Iowa.
Ay, she's all over Fox. We just made fun of her right before you came on. We were ay.
Do it. She deserves every bit of it. We've got a wonderful candidate in Arizona, Mark Kelly, who's really inspiring people. Climate Hawks vote backed Andrew Romanoff in Colorado, and unfortunately he lost to John Hickenlooper. And honestly, I'm going to sit out that race because I cannot bring myself to endorse John Frackenlooper.
Yeah, I used to live in Colorado. Then 15 years went by and I went back, and it's a whole different place. It's awful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wonderful still, but it's awful what they did to the Front Range. Oh, yeah. Well, when I was coming out of college, all the environmental people were like, we're moving to Colorado, dude. Open air, clean, And
right.
That's not what it is anymore, I guess. So it's rough. RL, final thoughts as we come to the end of the segment here. And I do thank you for your time.
Don't give up on the Democratic Party. It needs reform. It needs really big structural reform, but it's better than the alternatives, which are third party sitting this one out or voting for that orange monstrosity. Mm-hmm. And if you don't want to do anything for Joe Biden beyond your vote, that's okay. I get it. Just find a different candidate, whether that candidate is in the House or the Senate or even a local school board, because we need to build up our bench. Get involved, get inspired, and show up in November. Check out climatehawksvote.com and let's see what they do with the platform.
We've been speaking with R.L. Miller, political director of Climate Hawks Vote. You can follow her at RL_Miller on Twitter, and definitely check out Climate Hawks Vote. Very important group that's been working for years and getting some real successes out there. Thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure to meet you as I've continued to follow what Climate Hawks Vote has been doing over the course of these years. I hope you'll come back and join us another time.